and thank you guys so much for joining us for our Friday weekly webinar. Today's topic is immigration best practices on affirmative asylum. Dun, dun, dun. Today we have our lovely managing attorney, Ruby Powers. She's going to be giving us all of the inside scoop as to what you need to know, and she most definitely has some new information as she recently went to an interview. So we're excited about that. And let me just tell you all a little bit on our managing attorney. She's been licensed since 2008, founded the firm in 2009. We are 12 years old, preteen. She is a board certified immigration attorney, of course, and she is also an author on her extra time. So thank you so much, Ruby, for joining us today, and I'll let you take it away with the learning objectives.
Thanks so much.
Of course.
So basically, asylum, as I've said before, can be very difficult to obtain. Here at Powers Law Group, we've helped individuals apply for asylum from, I think it's around 25 or so different countries. So we have a wealth of information and have been quite successful even in such a difficult area of the law. So not only are we an immigration law firm, but we also have a lot of experience in asylum. And, there's affirmative and there's defensive. Affirmative, you go to the asylum officer first, and defensive, you're in front of the immigration judge. So we're going to talk a little bit about affirmative asylum. What are the steps? Some information about USCIS, a little bit about the form, fingerprints, security checks, interview notice, preparing for that interview, and decision. Now, this in no way replaces legal, this is not legal advice, and it doesn't replace needing to have an attorney to help guide you and support you along the way. But I just wanted to provide this information so you have a better understanding of what you're looking at and to help guide you and let you know the importance of being prepared and and having an attorney, an experienced attorney along your side. So what is affirmative asylum? Individuals can apply for asylum affirmatively if they've been persecuted or have a fear they'll be persecuted because of one of 5 things: race, nationality, religion, membership in a particular social group. Now that's a sort of a catch-all which you can define into your particular situation, or political opinion. Now, a lot of times people call this asilo político or think it's only political opinion, but no, it can be for many other different reasons. That they have to be here in the US to apply for affirmative asylum, regardless of how you enter, and you need to apply within 1 year. Now, there are some exceptions to that, but this is more of a cursory overview. And then we have other topics that are a little bit more in detail, more webinars, more in detail, but you can apply at a port of entry or if necessary, airport as well. In affirmative asylum process, the officer decides whether the individual will be granted asylum. And if they will not actually deny your application. If anything, they will just refer it. And so it's not technically a denial. That's a big misconception. If they just don't approve it, they would refer it to immigration court, and then you would be doing this process in immigration court. So what would be generally the steps of this process? So you're looking at, you come to the United States, you have a consultation with an experienced immigration attorney. That's step 1B, I guess you could say A, or somewhere in between 1 and 2. And you apply for asylum, ideally before your status expires, ideally before 1 year, whichever one happens first, with some exceptions. Then once it's submitted, you will be asked to go do your fingerprinting, and they will run background checks on you. And then at some point, no one knows when, you will receive an interview notice. And then that's when, if you have an immigration attorney or you hire one right then, whichever you have in your plan, you get prepped. So step between 4 and 5, you should definitely get prepped. And then you go to the interview. And then the interview, they take notes and they'll make a decision, the officer who conducted the interview, and then they'll send it to an supervisor to review. And then the decision will generally come in the mail. Sometimes they make you come in person. That goes back and forth. But generally for people who live more than so many miles, it's quite significant away from the office, or if a person is still in status, they won't make them come back in to pick up the decision. But that always is changing, especially under COVID. Okay, so you could always go to the USCIS website and learn more about the affirmative asylum. There's some considerable information, and I mean, really, it ebbs and flows as to the case law, but the crux of it is that you have to prove that you have past persecution and or fear future persecution on account of one of these 5 things. You don't have to have just one, you can have multiple, and that you have nowhere else to go in your home country, and you have nowhere else to go in the world, no other status. And so it's oversimplification, but that's the crux of it. And then we go into a little bit more detail, especially if there's some maybe exceptions or you have some questions along the way. Now, the form that you have to complete is called the I-589. Now, this I-589, even though I think they've updated a few times, they barely touch it. It's pretty much the same concept. The first, is it like 4 or so pages are all biographical. Your social, which you probably don't have, your A number, which you might not have already. Where do you live? What's your gender? What's your religion? What's your country of birth? What's your language? How many times have you been to the US? How did you enter? What's your travel document? And then there's also questions about marriage and about children, and then about work, and education, and your last addresses in your home country, as well as information about your parents. They want to know about your mom, your dad, your siblings. Were they born? Where do they live right now? So there's a lot of information. And so when you're thinking you might need to apply, you've got to really make a plan you're going to be collecting a lot of information. You might not know it right off the top of your head, and you want it to be as accurate as you possibly can when you submit it. And as this slide says, you don't want to file it late, because you would have a very hard time. I mean, generally, if you file after the 1 year, you have to meet an exception. It has to be exceptional circumstance or change circumstance. And just, we have cases, we've done affirmative all around the US. I think we've gone to at least 6 asylum offices. It's like New Orleans, Houston, Virginia, Boston, New Jersey, Miami, something I'm forgetting somewhere in there. But basically, majority of them, they have a little bit of different interpretations of the law sometimes. But in the Houston office, they seem to be very hard on applying after the 1 year filing deadline. And so you don't want to submit, and you want it to be received. You ideally want it to be received. There's some exceptions with that too, but you want it to be in their hands and they get a receipt that says they got it before the 1 year filing deadline. So this, the I-589 has other questions like, were you part of an organization? Are you still part of an organization? Have you ever been cited, arrested, detained, stuff like that? And so there's a lot of questions, and so you need to be prepared for this application. After you submit it, the USCIS is going to issue biometrics, and because you might not have already been put in the system in some way, and they're going to run that for multiple reasons. They're going to verify your identity at the interview, because they'll do it again, and they're also going to run background check to make sure that there's no criminal charges or anything when they're to make sure everything is accurate from what you've said in the past. You don't need an attorney to go to the biometric appointment, but I would definitely suggest having an attorney who goes to the interview with you. Now, when you get this interview notice, there's 8 asylum offices and 2 sub offices. And so, for example, in all of Texas, if you live in Texas, you go to the Houston Asylum Office. If you live in Louisiana, you go to the New Orleans office. Texas also has jurisdiction of other states as well. And sometimes a state could be split. So there is a nice little map on USCIS website that's called the Asylum Office Locator. And then you can find out which one has jurisdiction. Now, some of them are bigger and some are sub, and sometimes they call them, what is it called? The ride, interview ride, or I forgot what it's called, but basically officers will do visits to regions to schedule appointments for people. Now, in any way. Right now, there was a program about 3 or 4 years ago that said last in, first out. So if you file now, you're technically supposed to be under the last in, first out, which means you're supposed to get an appointment soon, but they're super backlogged and that's not really going to happen. So under the policy, the interview, they're going to be giving people to interviews to those who had to reschedule for whatever reason, maybe it was COVID or whatever. Second priority of those who've been pending 21 days or less since the filing, and then they will continue to go backwards to older filings. But I'll tell you, I don't think I've had any of my cases that were pre-LIFO, which I believe was January 2018, been filed, had an interview unless they asked for an expedite request. But when you get this notice, you'll probably have about 1 month before your appointment. So then you're going to need to get prepared. So you're going to have your attorney make sure they have a G28. So just letting you know, we file these applications and then we prep our clients and go with them, or we also get hired for people who hired another attorney, moved around, or filed on their own and want to have an attorney attend with them. But I'll just tell you that if you filed on your own and you're waiting for an interview, don't wait till the last minute to hire us or an attorney, because they might not be able to give you the attention you need to prepare and all the documents. You want to be as prepared as much as possible. So on the day, what we normally do is once we get the appointment, we schedule maybe 1 or 2 preps with the client, and we prepare them for a couple hours each time, ideally, so that they they get comfortable again with their story, because it might have been a few years since they had prepared their application, as well as to know what type of questions the officer will ask. On the day of the interview, you're going to need to bring your ID, not only just your work authorization, your ID, you're going to need to bring all the passports you've ever had, because they want to verify travel and things like that. Bring your original birth certificates, marriages certificate, any of those information. You don't have to bring a copy of your I-589, but anything that you submitted a copy of and you want to show the original, and anything that you want to supplement your file, you want to bring that as well. Now, there was a change recently, so now you do not have to bring an interpreter. There is a long list of languages. I don't have that list right in front of me right now, but there's a long list of languages that if you speak one of those languages, you do not need to bring an interpreter, because they can call someone on the phone. And it's quite extensive, that list, actually. So so back in the day, not too long ago, you had to bring your interpreter, but now you don't. So that means so that's been a change. So, it's a long list of languages that you do not need to bring an interpreter for, because they have, and when you get the interview notice, they will tell you, if you speak one of these languages and need an interpreter, we've got you. But if it's one of these other ones, if it's anything that's not on this chart, then you need to bring one. Okay. So you will need to bring your spouse and children under 21. They at least need to do their biometrics and be asked some security questions. And anything that's not in English needs to be translated and certified. Now, what's happening right now is that when you go to the interview, it'll be to be COVID safe, you will be in a room by yourself or with your family, and your attorney will be in another room and your officer will be in another room. And you will all be using phone for audio and the little iPad thingy for your visual. And when I went to the Houston office this week, they made a change where now it has a little device to get the camera up closer to your face. It feels more of a closer connection for everybody when they're conducting this interview. And so the officer, so that's a whole nother topic webinar about what happens in the interview, but basically they go over the application. The 3 parts are application, 2, your statement, 3, security questions. And we'll do a webinar at some point about how to prepare for your appointment. And we've done those in the past too, but we can give you an updated one sometime soon. So at the end of the interview, they will say how they're going to give that decision to you. They'll make you sign some things, the edits to the application. And then basically the officer is going to determine whether you're eligible or not, if you meet the requirements, or if you're barred for any particular reason. I have seen longer processing times when my clients have worked for the government, military, or traveled around a lot, that mostly pending security checks. I've also seen when clients were interviewed in one location and then moved to another state or jurisdiction, and that caused some delay in moving the file. So we have been hired very often about people had other attorneys or filed on their own and need some help and advocacy. So please do reach out to us. We can take on all different types of cases. You don't, we're open to that. We do that a lot. So don't hesitate. So now eventually, either you're going to go to the asylum office to pick up that decision, or it'll be mailed to you. And again, you're pretty much either going to get approval, which is wonderful, and then that's good. You can apply for a green card within 1 year, or you're going to get a maybe a request for information, which I haven't seen one in a long time, but they usually would give you 16 days to respond. And then the other option would be a very likely, it could be a denial if you're still in status. But so the fourth possibility is it gets referred to immigration court, which does not mean a denial. And if you get referred to immigration court, they're going to give you a notice to appear. And they're also going to give you a, make you sign if you have to come in to collect it. And then they'll very likely give you a hearing date in the near future where you can apply for asylum all over again in front of a judge. So that is just a general overview of preparing for just knowledge of affirmative asylum. And we like we said, we have a lot of experience asylum. We've helped many individuals. So please do keep us in mind. Dana, how can people stay in touch with us going forward?
Of course. So you can follow us on our social medias. We are on all social media platforms. TikTok, we will be on TikTok soon, and that will be added to our social media handles here for you to follow. So we have some new content for you guys to come. Again, you guys can also always subscribe to our newsletter that goes out bi-weekly. So next week it'll be out on Tuesday, filled with immigration trends and updates and anything that involves attorney powers in the media. And just really good info all around. Again, for our next presentation here for our weekly webinar, the topic is going to be victims of criminal activity applying for the U visa. And for our Christmas week special, we are going to be discussing about employment immigration and what you need to know about the H-1B visa. So really excited about these topics and to be filling, I think this is our first year that we did webinars every Friday for a whole year. Very proud of ourselves and happy to be of service to all. And again, if you guys have any questions in regards to any immigration matter, case, or concern, or would just like a second opinion, do not hesitate to give us a call at 713-589-2085 or shoot us an email at contact@rubypowerslaw. We hope you all have a great rest of your day. And Attorney Powers, any parting words?
No, just don't hesitate to reach out. If you review your application, if you want us to prep you for an interview, if you want us to take over your case for almost any stage, we can take over. Just need to have enough time. But we really love helping individuals through their journey in asylum because we know that many people have overcome so much, and we want to help them find their place here in the United States and be able to overcome their past. So thank you so much for watching, and please reach out if you have any questions.